Kia ora and welcome to the Niggly Nifty Niche Cast. This is the official podcast of the niche-cage.com, where we go deep into Aotearoa sporting matters. You know what we do's and you know how we do's it. We have lots of fun, positive, exciting Aotearoa sporting stuff to chat through today. I've even got a fun, positive, exciting angle on a bad weekend for the Warriors. For anyone who wasn't aware, the Warriors lost in the NRL, they lost in New South Wales Cup, and they lost in the under-21 grade, which is extra smelly because the New South Wales Cup and under-21s were both in Auckland. But we'll get onto that later on because I do want to celebrate some negativity, some concern, some worry, some anxiety. And this stems from our podcast last week, where I came to the conclusion that we were in a little concerning phase for the football ferns. And there's no update there because they're not doing anything.
Of course. They don't update things. So.
And that's all right. There could have been an update. We might have had some word about the coach. We might have played some games, but whatever. The football ferns, they pop up every couple of months, and we'll see whether there is some more positivity about their next announcement. But that is to say, there is some concern around how the football ferns are tracking at the moment. More specifically, how New Zealand football are operating the football ferns. But the thing I brought up last week that really hit a boiling point over the weekend was concern for the Wellington Phoenix and how they are situated right now, or how they were situated last week. And then both teams have had losses over the weekend. So I'll use that as an entry point to highlight a little bit more concern for the Wellington Phoenix. But we will talk about the Wellington Phoenix later on in the podcast. So all of this just got me thinking, are there any other concerning hot pockets in our New Zealand sporting realms? Hot pockets is a term I use all the time, like a little hot pocket. You got these dudes over there doing this. You got these ladies over there, like Otago cricket. That's all hot pocket. So hot pocket is a very positive term. So I was like, what's another way of phrasing this? The poo pocket. That's a bit vulgar. But that's what the streets are calling it, the poo pocket. I was like, oh, there's maybe just a holy pocket. Not in terms of we worship the holy pocket, because as we all know, I worship Rangitoto Island, and you might worship Mount Manaia up in the north.
Parihaka is closer to where I live, so there's actually a hill even closer than that, which I don't know what it's called, but I got a few options.
Stuff. But I mean holy pocket as in there's a hole in my pocket, which is far less useful, far more concerning than a hot pocket. So do you have any poo pockets, holes in your pockets in your New Zealand sporting beat? Because the Breakers, they're all good now. And we'll talk about them in a jiffy. So I'm not what's your most concerning pocket of New Zealand sport right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird one because for 7 years, it's been the Breakers probably. There's been a few others that fluctuated, but there's been at least that steady thing of just the Breakers are a mud organization. And now they might not be a mud organization anymore. So I think they've graduated out of this without having actually played another game yet. So hopefully they're actually good, because it would suck if they do all this good stuff, get a bunch of Kiwi players in, get some more Kiwi presence on the coaching staff and the ownership, boardroom, all this stuff, and then don't do any better on the floor than they did last season. But I'm confident that they will. I don't see why they shouldn't. So they're exempt from this. I did wonder, I mean, I don't know if the Indian Panthers count as a Kiwi sporting pocket. Maybe there is definitely some very obvious concern there about a team that's entering the NBL, has lost every single game, been thrashed in most of them. Their head coach quit after 1 or 2 games, I forget how many. Most of their players who were not really even announced properly still haven't turned up. like 6 or 7 games into the season, still haven't got most of these guys. It doesn't seem like that was organized or explained very well. It was like we found out in the week of that they're not going to be doing the blitz, preseason blitz, and then because a bunch of players have been called up to an Indian national team camp, and then that seemed to finish a while ago, and still we're only getting a couple of guys filtering in. And then maybe the funniest part of all of this was last week, where the import for the Indian Panthers, Alex Robinson, who's been their best player, he's been really good. Quite small, but American guard, speedy, scores a bunch of points for them. He left. And he didn't just leave the Indian Panthers, he left for another NBL team. The other NBL team that he signed with was the Nelson Giants, who also haven't won a game all season. So he left one winless team to sign with another winless team. So shout out to him. I hope he gets a win before the season is done, because he deserves it. He's actually played really well. Some guys just have, too many burdens to carry. I don't know. But I do actually think the Nelson Giants team is all right. I think they've had a tough run of fixtures. They've played most of the teams at the top. So I think they'll swing around. They've been a lot more competitive. But I also don't know if the Indian Panthers being bad actually matters that much. I don't think it really affects the rest of the NBL, and it's not even really a New Zealand team, so I'm not sure if that counts. In which case, I think the one you brought up first of the Wellington Phoenix is probably the one I would fall upon.
Yeah, I'm not concerned at all about the Indian Panthers. I actually find it hilarious. Like, everything you described made me laugh. So they're a giggle pocket of just like, what's going on there? I mean, Nelson Giants, they haven't won a game, so there is some concern there, but maybe they've signed the best Indian Panther ever to salvage their season and get a win. So maybe not concerned, just having a struggle season, but they're on the up and up. Maybe, like, they still need to win a game. The only, obviously we have a bit of a bias. So if you're listening to this, you got to absorb our bias. And when I say rugby union is in a concerning pocket, you got to take on our bias. But I will plant that seed because, I mean, once again, the only sport in New Zealand that's worried about their crowds is rugby union. So we've just got to say that. And we've got the NRLW starting, Warriors women starting, that will overtake all women's rugby union as well. So if anyone actually cared, rugby union would be a concerning pocket. And everything that's going on behind the scenes, their board, their investments, and all that stuff that a keen Kiwi sports fan might be interested in. I don't have any concerns about anything in New Zealand cricket at all. Don't really have any concerns about anything in New Zealand rugby league. I am a little bit concerned about the Newcastle Knights, though, because they are one of the most meek NRL teams right now. And that's all good because they're in Australia. They're an Australian team. But as we'll discuss later on in this podcast, the Newcastle Knights have an abundance of Kiwi-NRL juniors in their system. And over the years of tracking the Kiwi-NRL stuff as I have done, there has been a trend of Newcastle Knights investing a lot in Kiwi-NRL juniors who then don't quite kick on for the Knights at the NRL level. That is only amplified. That is only increased with the amount of Kiwi-NRL juniors the Knights are recruiting and developing, but they're entering a NRL team that is consistently just like bleh. And they're even more bleh this year. They can barely score a point. So I am a little bit concerned at how that pipeline of Kiwi-NRL talent progresses at the Knights, but again, that's not really heavy-duty Aotearoa flavour. So the only thing of major concern in New Zealand sport right now is the Wellington Phoenix. And
I do have one other one that I just thought of while you're saying that, because I had never watched a Formula One race in my life until a couple of weeks ago when one of my mates who does watch Formula One a lot. It was his birthday, so he had a round up at the pub to watch the Melbourne one, the first one of the season. So I went along, watched the Auckland FC game on my phone while I was there, but also kind of got swept up in the spectacle and the coverage and the hype of all the F1 stuff. So I then watched the next race, and I think I watched I can't remember what they're up to, if it's 3 or 4. 4. They've done 4. I watched the first 3. The one this week was in like the middle of the night, so who cares about that? I wasn't going to get up and watch the Bahrain GP. Very much cursory interest still at this point, but the Liam Lawson stuff is what dragged me into it, and everything about Liam Lawson's journey this year has been terrible. Mostly just stitch ups from the team around him, but then also they put him in the other car, and he hasn't actually done that much better yet. And he's getting beaten by the guy that replaced him. So that's been a bit of a bummer one so far. But early season, maybe that'll turn around. I don't know if you've followed any of that at all.
I do observe it, but I'm far more interested in the old V8s. The V8s were in Taupo this weekend. Yep. I think Kiwi won that as well.
He did.
And that's a hot take. V8's better than F1. F1, like, I can see how people get caught up in it because it's a lot of like Louis Vuitton. It's like one of those kind of glamour events, one of those glamour competitions. But I mean, V8s just hits the spot for me. There's more Kiwis. It's more grounded. It's more like humble and just like chill, which is all about. That's what I am all about. So shout out to the V8s. And even, I mean, we got a Kiwi, and we got Kiwis in every kind of major motorsport zone in the world. Like, we don't talk a lot about,
and a lot of them came through the V8s as well.
Exactly. We don't talk a lot about motorsport here because we don't know a lot about it, but I do, as the premier believer that New Zealand is the best sporting nation in the world, I have to take notice of the fact that whether it's the dirt bikes, whether it's the motorbikes, whether it's NASCAR, whether it's the old not NASCAR, the other one in America, like the Indy 500, Indy cars, V8s, Formula One. There's Kiwis involved, and that's what makes New Zealand the best sports nation in the world, because every sport, we got some team competing at a world-class level, and that's just the introduction to the podcast. Big up to everyone listening and supporting the Niche Case. We've got lots of deep dives on our website, theniche-case.com. You can read about Aotearoa sport. And if you do love a bit of reading, you can sign up for our newsletter via Substack, thenichecase.substack.com. Many of the notes and nuggets we will be discussing today come from the newsletter. Completely free to sign up and get 2 newsletters a week full of Aotearoa sporting information. There is also a bonus section for paid subscribers on Substack, which is extra New Zealand sporting information. And of course, the full newsletter, the free section, the paid section, it's all copied into Patreon for the generous folks on Patreon who support our work. If you want to get into the nitty-gritty, Patreon's a little bit cheaper, a few dollars a month, and you get the bonus podcast which we record every Thursday. That goes on to Patreon. Full newsletter goes into Patreon. So shout out to everyone who is part of the Patreon whānau, patreon.com/EL niche cachet, if that's how you want to say it. And of course, we will be sending out our bonus podcast on Thursday as part of that newsletter dispatch via Substack for the paid subscribers. There, you can donate through Buy Me a Coffee. That's always a nice little boost for us, and we'll send you some karmic mana waves in return. And of course, we're here on the podcast, which you can watch on YouTube. You can have a little listen in your eardrums on Spotify and Apple as well. Big up to you. We're out here. We're doing our best, just trying to have a good day today and tomorrow, which will be today if you're listening to it tomorrow. Either way, just have a good day. Be the best that you can be. Maybe try to smile. That goes hard. The old smile. A little bit of smiling, a little bit of gratitude, and a little bit of just chilling out and being nice to yourself. That's a little bit of mindfulness for you, but we need a little bit more. What do you got?
I have got a quote from DT Suzuki. I did check what the DT stood for, but it's not written on this image here, and I can't remember it. So DT Suzuki, he said, "I am an artist at living. My work of art is my life."
Very good. I think that applies to just the, your, I don't know, your lifestyle, your work, whether it's your art, whether it's your work, whether it's your passion. All of that can just be how you live, what you do every day. Whether it's whatever job you have, whatever lifestyle you're living, that can just be how you do your thing. I'm not very good at explaining that one, to be honest.
Well, I mean, think what a work of art is for, like it's for being appreciated. It's for teaching you something. It's it's supposed to be an aesthetic experience as well, although it doesn't have to. You could plenty of work of art, so plenty of paintings about dark and dangerous things as well. But I guess you get to choose, don't you? You get to choose what type of work of art your life is going to be. But as long as you keep that attitude of this is something of value, this is something of importance to myself and to others as well, then you're probably on the right track.
Steven Adams and the Houston Rockets are on the right track, and that track has stopped at the NBA playoff station. You wrote in our newsletter that the Rockets will face the winner of the playing game between the Memphis Grizzlies and Golden State Warriors. Steven Adams, he is back in NBA playoffs, and we've been tracking this double big lineup that they've had with Alperen Sengun, so that's a funky little wrinkle to watch out for in the NBA playoffs. And there's also been this idea of teams going big again. Whether it's having a deal with someone like Nikola Jokic, the best players kind of are the biggest players at the moment with Jokic and a few others around the league. But you've also got a paragraph in our newsletter that says that Cleveland Cavaliers, they've got Mobley and Allen as two big men. Oklahoma's got Holmgren and Hartenstein. So there's a few teams that have the double big situation. The Rockets are one of the best, though, with Steven Adams and Alperen Sengun, if not the best. Is that the main nugget that the listener should take away heading into this NBA playoffs, is the double big situation with Steven Adams and Alperen Sengun, or is there a different nugget that you want to highlight?
I think that probably is the main nugget, because that's how Steven Adams is going to get his minutes. And yeah, like I said in the thing, it is maybe a little bit of trend setting there, because that duo has been awesome, and they have just consistently torched opponents, and in a way where I think a lot of the reaction now, even now when you're starting to see people actually recognize it and take notice of how good this double big lineup has been, a lot of it is about just how good they are at rebounding. And it's yeah, of course they're good at rebounding. You've got two big men on the floor. Of course they're going to be good at rebounding. You've got more size than the other team, generally speaking. And Steven Adams happens to be a legendary offensive rebounder, and Sengun in particular is really good at grabbing those defensive boards. So they work well in combination too. They both box out, but especially Steve-O leads the league in box outs per 36 minutes. If he'd played more significant minutes, he might have been leading in other factors as well. We've got to take the ratio ones into the equation here because of his lesser role, particularly in the first half of the season before they started using that double big stuff. So of course they're going to be good at rebounding when they're on the floor together. I expect Hartenstein and Holmgren is good at rebounding as well. I expect Allen and Mobley are good at rebounding as well. And those, by the way, that's the top seed team in the East and the top seed team in the West. So it's not just that some other teams are using this. It's that the best teams seem to be leaning towards having the big, which is often how those trends work, right? It's the best team, you come up with something good. If it's not good, no one cares. If it's good, then everyone copies you because you're successful with it. So I think maybe there's a little element of that where these things always go in cycles. So we're coming out of an era where big men were expected, like, if you're going to stay on the court, you're going to have to be able to shoot. It's the only way you're going to last in this era of spacing, spacing, spacing. And then you got someone like Steven Adams going against the grain and showing that you can get spacing in a variety of ways, like just a good screen. That's spacing. That's all you need. Being an amazing offensive rebounder so that no one ever doubles up on the perimeter because they're too scared to leave you alone in case the three-point shot misses. That's also spacing in its own way. But I don't think the rebounding stuff is the only reason that this works. In fact, I think if it was the only reason, I don't think it would work. Just because you had a couple of good rebounders might still easily be torched by a team that can play quickly and play fast around you. But one of the interesting things about Adams and Sengun is that when they're on the floor together, Houston Rockets actually play faster. They get more possessions per game on average while those guys are on the floor than what their overall team average is. So they're quicker with the two. The cliche would be that they would be slower for having a couple of bigger, heftier fellas out there. They're not. They play faster. And one of the reasons they do that is partly because they get a lot of offensive rebounds, but also because those two are both good passers. And there's just like, Adams is also ranking very highly for loose ball recoveries, and Sengun is a guy who can shoot from multiple levels, and he's very good in scoring in the post. And like, they're both very skilled players in different ways, but they're both very skilled players for those positions. And I think that's the reason why the double big lineup works so well, is because of the skill of both of them, not just the size of them. The size, anyone could get two big guys out there on the floor, and then maybe it would work for some teams as well. But I think what makes this lineup so outstanding is that they're able to pass, they're able to shoot, they're able to create space for their wing players to knock down open threes and all this kind of stuff. Like, they're a very skillful lineup as well, which I think is the secret weapon behind the rebounding.
We also had a lovely development with the New Zealand Breakers, the Breakers of Aotearoa, not the American Breakers, not the Indian Breakers, not the next star Breakers, but the New Zealand Breakers, who have actually factually signed a couple of Kiwis. Who knows how that goes? Because they have Taylor Britt, one of our favorite Kiwi basketballers from the Canterbury Rams, back-to-back NBL champion Canterbury Rams, who are currently second on the NBL ladder. He is now with the Breakers. They also have Rob Lowe returning to Auckland after a very good stint with Melbourne United, retired, then played a couple of years with Melbourne United. Now he is back in Auckland, and these signings come after they snared Reuben Te Rangi late last week, I believe. So the New Zealand Breakers
and Isaiah Liafa as well.
And Liafa. So that's 4 Kiwi basketballers right there signed to the Breakers, who were all ignored by the previous Breakers regime. Fantastic signings that not only, like, they're all good basketballers. Like, the prospect of Taylor Britt and Liafa playing as the guards together, as well as 2 young Kiwis on the roster, Kaya Isaac and Alex McNaught, that is fantastic. Having Rob Lowe, big man, shooting a couple threes, doing his thing, that's fantastic. Especially if Rob Lowe's playing alongside Sam Meninga, another big man from Aotearoa who's on the roster. What are your perspectives, your opinions on these 4 signings for the Breakers? And of course, if you follow the Newscase, the newsletter, the website, the social medias, you'll be on top of any other signings that may come over the next couple of days, the next week or so. But those 4 signings in particular, what did you make of them?
Arguably, you could almost say 5 signings, because the other thing that the new owners have done is they've upgraded Carlin Davison from a development player role into a full rostered role as well. So he's someone who was already with the team, but he's now on the team with a bigger role, similar of what we saw with Max Darling last season, went from a DP to a fully rostered player, and then actually surprisingly was he's pretty good last season. He definitely enjoyed his bigger role, particularly at the start of the season. So that does finish their local player spots. Like, there's no more room to sign any more locals on full spots. There is that Carlin Davison DP spot that's been vacated now. So they might sign, well, I expect they will sign another development player. That's always the thing you do after you've signed everyone else, is move on there and look at how many good like teenagers or young players there are in the NBL right now. You can, you might not be able to take your pick completely because a lot of them have already aligned with American colleges where they're going to go that way instead. But you're going to have a pretty fair selection of up and coming players that you can find to fill out that last DP spot. I don't know if you're allowed more than 3 DPs. I don't think so. If you do, those guys are never going to play because you get, especially when you've already got a next star on the roster, as they do, because Kareem Lopez will be back for another season. First next star to actually do 2 seasons, which seems like a positive development. Player actually staying for longer than 1 season rather than certain others that they had earlier on who left before the first season was even finished. They have kept Sean Bairstow, which is a little bit surprised about because they didn't have to, and he didn't do a whole lot for them last season, but he will be the only Australian on the roster now because they cut loose Mitch McCarron as well, who also didn't do much last season and kind of had there's an important role that Mitch McCarron played in that squad, which is that he was sort of wasn't much of a shooter, but he was a good passer, smart player, and a veteran leader. I thought it was very interesting when you look at the recent squads that the Breakers have had, which I did, just scanning back at some of them. And often that kind of all the good teams have someone like this, right? Like the veteran leader who maybe isn't going to play heaps of minutes, but is going to make everyone else better because they're just there to impart their wisdom, play a little bit here or there, and just, drive standards, all that good stuff that you expect from your leaders. It's pretty interesting that the previous Breakers kind of outsourced that role in the team to Australians. They had Mitch McCarron, they had Cam Glidden and guys like this. The new Breakers have brought back Reuben Te Rangi, so he's going to be that guy. I don't know if he'll play more than 15 minutes for the Breakers. He might, because he's probably going to be your backup for Kareem Lopez, and a young starting small forward is likely to need some protection at times in certain lineups, so he might well, but at the very least Te Rangi is going to be that guy who is your veteran leader, but also in this case a Kiwi veteran leader, someone who has a history with the club. He's won a championship with the club. He might be the last player left from the last time they won a championship. I'd have to check that and see, but he's someone who is aware not only of the mana of New Zealand basketball, but because of course he is a regular captain of the Tall Blacks, and he's someone who maybe if you're looking at just pure stats and whatnot, you might wonder why he keeps getting selected for Tall Blacks, and then you hear people talk about him and you hear him talk about the sport, and it's pretty clear why he keeps getting selected, and you see him, see him leading the team out and stuff. This is why he's that guy, and he's that guy for the Tall Blacks. He's going to be that guy for the Breakers, which made Mitch McCarron's role redundant, and so they've managed to squeeze out of that one. There is technically still the Taco Fall thing where they haven't released him yet, but I think it sounds like everyone expects that they're going to, which should mean a clean slate of imports. They'll bring in 3 more. I don't think Parker Jackson Cartwright will be back. But who knows? Maybe that's possible. But I expect them to sign a couple of import guards. But yeah, that is their local crew sorted in terms of the main roster fellas, and they've cut loose a bunch of Australians. They've added Taylor Britt. They've added Isaiah Liafa returning to the team after a year away in Sydney. They've added Reuben Te Rangi returning to the team after many years away. Rob Lowe returning to the team. Carlin Davison's been upgraded. Max Starling's already there. Sam Meninga's already there. I'm not 100% convinced about the Meninga-Lowe combination. I sort of would have liked a big man duo that has a little bit more variety. They feel like a bit too similar in some ways. Although Meninga would have to up his 3-point range to maybe fulfill that similarity completely. But I was thinking about that a little bit more, and I was wondering, well, maybe you sign an import big who can play center or power forward, and then you can just match them with those guys. I also wondered about the possibility of Meninga and Lowe on the court together at the same time. Meninga as your Alperen Sengun, Rob Lowe as your Steven Adams, maybe the other way around. I don't know, because actually Rob Lowe is the guy who has the better outside shooting, but who knows? They would, it would be their own unique combination, but potentially there's some double big things since that's now all the rage. Potentially you might be able to do something like that. So I'd say that got me back excited again. But I think mostly with the Rob Lowe thing, like it would be like regardless of what the fit may be, I think this is a hilarious signing because Rob Lowe was treated worse than any other New Zealand player by the previous ownership. There was that whole thing where he was like, his wife, who was American and was living in New Zealand during COVID time, so away from all her family, heavily pregnant. She gave birth. He was stuck in Australia. Eventually, he left because he's like, she apparently has a complicated birth, and he needed to be there for her. She had no other structures. And the Breakers treated him like he was a traitor for leaving them in the middle of the season and told them he wouldn't be back this season. They shut him down, even though he didn't say that. Of course, they did bring him back before the end of the season, so it was all bluff and bluster, which is common for those for that era of Breakers. But nobody was treated worse than him. Not even Corey Webster, who got told he was the worst starting two guard in the league when he asked to leave that time. Like Rob Lowe was treated even worse than that by those Breakers, and he to the point where he retired rather than re-sign with them, and then went and played for a different team instead, which itself is a bit of a middle finger. Now it's another middle finger because he's returned to the Breakers as soon as the ownership changes. That's kind of hilarious, and it's yet another example of the new owners. They won't say it, but it feels like overtly doing the opposite of what the previous ownership did. Like it's almost like them doing a middle finger to the previous guys. Like, you did it this way, well, we'll do it this way. The opposite way. We're going to sign a bunch of Kiwis, and one of them is going to be Rob Lowe.
You did mention in the newsletter that it's unlikely that the boss man Ting, Hiram Harris, probably won't be joining the Breakers. And that's all right.
Less so now that Lowe's signed because there's no room. They've filled their local roster spots.
I do find it weird that there's a limit on how many locals you can have.
Well, there's not really. There's a limit on the overall size, and there's a limit on imports, right? So you could, to be fair, they could sign Hiram Harris instead of an import. That's true. I hadn't thought about that loophole, but of course you could. And why not?
Again, absorbing the bias, Hiram Harris is better than an import. Like, let's be honest. He's better than any import you can throw at me. I'm going to choose Hiram Harris. And Hiram Harris is part of the Wellington Saints, who are first in the NBL. They are 6-2. And they've played an extra game. So they're first, but you've also got Canterbury Rams, Taylor Britt, Max Darling, Kaya Isaac fame, as well as plenty more. Then you got the Tauranga Whai and Franklin Bulls are also 5-2. Hiram Harris just casually third for average points per game for Wellington, third for average assists per game for Wellington, and their leading rebounder. So that's just Hiram Harris, typical areas, good line, good length, straight through to the wicketkeeper. And they've had the boost of Shea Ili coming back, handy player to bring back into a NBL team, a New Zealand NBL team. Do you have any observations about the Wellington Saints or any of the other teams who are 5-2? Canterbury Rams, Tauranga Whai, Franklin Bulls.
Well, the Wellington Saints are a funky one because they were the dominant force in this competition for a long time. Haven't really been so the last couple of years. Like, they've still been decent, but they've not been certainly not been winning championships, and they've not really been competing as much for those championships as they would have hoped to once upon a time, even just a few years ago. So yeah, I think there was definitely a statement of intent about them this season. Hiram Harris has been awesome throughout, but like even because Shaylee's just turned up now after the NBL finals. He was kept fairly busy during all that. But up until like even then, a lot of teams will just wait for their players to arrive, rely on the youngsters. Like, you think of the situation at Hawke's Bay, for example, where they had a bunch of players from Melbourne, including their coach, who was an assistant coach for Melbourne United as well. They weren't available up until recently, but they just sweet as Jackson Ball can do what he does. We'll just take this time to let Jackson Ball and Campbell Scott and like Kobe Carter and whoever else have just bigger roles than they will otherwise get later on in the season. But we'll give them the spotlight at the start. Wellington went out and got Sean Bruce. It's when he got a top level Australian player to fill the gap until Shea arrived. So they were not willing to make any concessions or sacrifices or cut any corners there. They're very clearly the fact they signed Shea at all, who hasn't really played in the New Zealand NBL for a couple of years, usually spends his Aussie off seasons playing the NBL 1 stuff, the sort of the level below that in Australia, which is an off-season league. A lot of them do. He generally does that, or he just, I don't know, I'm sure he's taken a break on a couple of things. He is a guy who's had a few injuries. That was a statement signer in and of itself. And then also, I think the big one was bringing in Aaron Young as head coach, who was coaching, I think that was the To'a last year, wasn't it? And he is an assistant coach, Kiwi coach as well. Although I think partly raised in America, but well, he's back and forth. He's a dual national. He is also, I hope he's back for next season. I don't actually know. They'll tell you when the players sign, so and so on a 2-year contract, player option second year, blah blah blah. They don't tell you that about the coaches. So I assume he's back next season as an assistant with the Perth Wildcats as well. Who, if you remember, up until now, they have actually had a pretty solid core of Kiwi players who've been playing for Perth, but Ty Webster's now a free agent. Hiram Harris is a free agent. Dante Russo-Nance, who's having a spectacular season, big breakout year for him in the New Zealand stuff with Manawatu. He's supposedly moving up to a fully rostered spot, so that is nice. Perth will keep at least one of those guys around. Don't think they'll bring Ty Webster back. Maybe there's a chance of Hiram Harris going back, even though he hardly played towards the end of last season, so I kind of don't want him there. I want him to go to a team where they actually use him properly, but you never know. Like Bryce Cotton, I think, has left as well, so it puts Perth in a little bit of a rebuild mode, which maybe that clears up some space for Hiram Harris to get back to the role that he was playing the season before last. So who knows? But Aaron Young had we can assume, I think safely, a decent part to play in them bringing in a few extra Kiwis. Been a very good coach with the To'a last couple of years, and now seems to be doing excellent things with the Wellington Saints, getting them back up where they feel that they belong. And they were already winning games. Then Shea turns up. Doesn't even play much off the bench in the first game, still gets 13 points and I think 10 assists. Plays a whole lot in the second game, scores 31 points, makes 4 out of 4 3-point shots. Still gets about 8 assists on top of that. That's like a James Harden stat line, that one. That's amazing stuff. And that's Shea just getting up to speed. So, the Wellington Saints, it seems like they're pretty good again. And it seems like I definitely don't want to count out. It seemed like, I think the Auckland To'a, they're not one of the 5-2 teams, are they? I think they dropped a few games early on while they were waiting for some of their guys to turn up. Is that right?
They are 5-3, so they've got the same number of wins, but they've played that extra game with an extra loss.
Yeah, well, I think they're trending very much upwards as well. Like Rob Lowe's been good for them, but also especially Davo Hickey, an Australian player who they brought over, who was he's just coming off his breakthrough season after a few years of trying with the Illawarra Hawks, and he was so good in that championship run that he was the guy that Matthew Dellavedova got given the finals MVP, and he walked over and gave it to Davo Hickey. He was like, "Actually, you deserve it. First of all, my team lost the finals, so I don't really want it, and second of all, you were the man here." And he has played 4 games for Auckland, and he's got 3 triple doubles in those ones. So he's just like his fingerprints are on everything. He's potentially, he might be the Australian Hiram Harris. I don't know. But a bigger scorer. He's fantastic. He's been awesome for them, and seems like a cool dude, like a fun player to watch as well. So, there's and of course the Canterbury Rams did have their streak snapped, their winning streak on over the weekend. Lost to Franklin, but they still very clearly seem like a dominant team. So we might be in that situation where maybe the 3 biggest contenders are just the teams from the 3 big cities. The Canterbury team, the Wellington team, and the Auckland team. But who knows?
Davo Hickey is actually William Hickey.
Yeah, I don't know where Davo comes from, but they call him Davo.
his middle name's David, so he just becomes.
Okay, well, that's where it comes from.
He's obviously Davo, but I was like, is his first name actually Davo? How's he spelt that? And
Yeah.
all I could find was William Hickey. So shout out to William Hickey, shout out to Davo Hickey, and shout out to your weekly mention of the Wellington Saints past dynasty. Like, you do it every week. I appreciate it because you got to remind folks, but I mean, we're here in the moment now, and it's the Canterbury Rams. The Canterbury Rams are the kings
Sure. Yeah.
of the NBL. Because like, people listen to you and they might think Wellington Saints stuff won the last 5 championships, but
No, that's what I was saying is they used to win all the championships and they haven't been because they've been usurped by the Canterbury Rams.
yeah, that's why
But
you
yes,
added it.
important to keep the hierarchy in place. The Rams are the
Yeah.
reigning dynasty.
Because you reminded me some of the NRL discussion, like these teams have been good for the last few years, so that automatically makes them good this season. But yeah, shout out to the Wellington Saints. Yes, they do have a lot of historical mana in the NBL, one of the most, if not the most prestigious New Zealand NBL franchise, but we are currently in the Canterbury Rams era until it changes. Maybe it's going to change back into Wellington's favour. Maybe we get a bit of a Tauranga Fire, bit of Franklin Bulls rising up the ranks as well, which would be good to see. We'll slide into cricket, where we've got a couple lads over in England, which is obviously the most important cricket tournament going on right now. Not a huge fan of England cricket, but I am a fan of the county championship when there's Kiwis involved and when it's being played at the same time as 2 T20 tournaments, which are basically cannibalizing each other, which is what they always do. And that's been a theme. I mean, if we're talking about repeating themes and repeating quotes and paragraphs, and this is only crystallized more recently because we do have the Pakistan League where there's a lot of Kiwis playing, but I mean, who cares about T20 tournaments around the world? It's always mentioned like, oh, the T20 franchise schedule and how it, the resistance, the static, the noise between that and the international schedule. No, it's the T20 schedule versus the T20 schedule. That's the biggest issue in cricket because you're just weakening one T20 tournament by playing the other T tournament at the same time or before or after. They all steal each other's talent. They all compete against each other. The T20 franchise stuff is its own bubble, is what I've come to realize. And we don't need to worry about the future of cricket because those T20 tournaments are just going to eat each other, which is why they are the cannibals of our sporting realms. If we're building out our Song of Ice and Fire, our Lord of the Rings kind of lore, the T20 tournaments are the cannibals of the far-flung islands. Whatever. There's that island in the... Can you just quickly search up the island of the Game of Thrones? Like it's off the coast of the north. Skagos. The T20 tournaments are like the Skagos type of characters, where the crazy cannibal characters who just eat each other. They don't actually do anything else. They just kind of... And the T20 tournaments just eat each other. But I need to bring it back to the county championship because the county championship, they're just chilling. Now, you do have the England cricket anxiety where they're always worrying about their competitions. They're always stressed about the competitiveness, the formats, and everything else. Like, there's one thing I know about England cricket. They love to worry about shit. But we do have Kiwis over in England doing the thing. Not dominant things. They're not over there stacking up the runs and wickets. Someone is. The one and only LVB, the Dutch freak, Logan van Beek. He has had a fantastic period because in the Plunket Shield this season, he scored 367 runs, averaging 28, hit a century, hit a 50, also finished as the leading wicket taker overall, 36 wickets at an average of 20.6. He is in his 3rd consecutive season of county championship, might be 4, might be 5, but I've only gone back 2 more previous seasons. In 2023, he averaged 19 with the bat and 20 with the ball. In 2024, he averaged 24 with the bat and 28 with the ball. Now, Logan van Beek in his first game for Leicestershire scored 82 not out and 25, took 4 wickets and 1 wicket, which comes together for Logan van Beek averaging 107 with the bat and 33 with the ball. Good start for Logan van Beek in county championship cricket. He finished the Plunket Shield. These are his scores in the last 4 games of Plunket Shield. 0, 2 not out, 10, 6, 22, 46 not out, 14, 5 not out. Nice couple of starts there, couple of not outs. Good stuff with the bat for LVB. Wickets in his last 4 games. 1 wicket, 4 wickets, 2 wickets, 5 wickets, 2 wickets, 4 wickets, 3 wickets, 3 wickets. Logan van Beek is on fire, and I look forward to his continued all-round excellence. Brett Hampton. He has a wicket in every innings bowled. I mean, that's just good stuff. He took 1 wicket and 1 wicket in the innings. I think they had a loss to Surrey. Scored 26 runs. Again, not dominant, but he's had scores of 14, 26, and he's got at least 1 wicket in all 4 innings bowled, averaging 20 with the bat, 34 with the ball. Jacob Duffy, first game playing for Worcestershire. Big man. Scored 1 run in each of his innings. So good stuff there from Jacob Duffy down the order. 3 wickets and no wickets. He is currently on 3 wickets, averaging 35, 6.3 RPO. Look forward to him settling into the county championship grind. And we've also got Blair Tickner. Blair Tickner, if you know what I'm saying. He scored 26 runs. He took 2 wickets and 3 wickets. And he is currently on averaging 26, as well as 5 wickets, averaging 33.8. So Logan van Beek, 2 innings, Tickner 2 innings, Duffy 2 innings, Hampton 2 innings. I think we've got 10 innings there across those 4 bowlers. And in one of the 10 innings, there's no wickets. Now, again, they're not dominating county championship, but these 4 dudes have wickets in 9 of their 10 combined innings, which is just good, solid Kiwi cricket stuff. And I do think we'll get a few more Kiwi lads popping up for county championship cricket over the next week or so. Tom Latham's been battling injury. I think Matt Henry's due to pop up. I believe we might see Ben Sears pop up as well. So it'll be good to track those lads over in the county championship rounds. I also did the 10 best women's cricketers, young women's cricketers. So we wrapped up the summer with the 10 best men's cricketers aged 25 or younger who have yet to play for the Black Caps. And we wrapped it up with the women as well. I won't go through the whole list, but I do want to highlight some players who I think can add something to the White Ferns in the coming years, like just the top tier. And there's nothing crazy because I think we've just got Nancy Patel, Northern Districts all-rounder, Emma Black. Emma Black actually was called up to the White Ferns squad during the Sri Lanka series. Didn't play, but she's on the cusp. And Zara Jetley, who didn't finish the season for Wellington, but she is, I'll say it again, she is an Eden Carson kind of clone. With the energy, the vitality, the fielding, the off-spin, decent batting as well. Zara Jetley's batting is getting a lot better. 2 youngsters, one of them was an honourable mention, and the other was part of the 10 best young cricketers who I think are going to put themselves into the White Ferns mix over the next year or so. Honourable mention was Hannah Francis, who was the youngest batter to score a century in the HBJ Shield. Wellington all-rounder, also very good with the ball. Went away with the Under-19 T20 World Cup tournament, so she missed a bunch of the Super Smash, but she is an excellent cricketer on the rise for Wellington. 18 or 19 years old. I think she's 19 now, but was 18 for most of the season. And Anna Browning, all-rounder for Otago, very good batter, off-spin bowler, good fielder. Anna Browning is similar to Emma McLeod. Just Emma McLeod doesn't really bowl, but Anna Browning does bowl, was one of the most efficient bowlers for Otago this season, moving down from Auckland. Won the HBJ Shield with Otago in her first season, so she added value there. But batting-wise, I think she's very similar to Emma McLeod. What else do we got here in my notebook? I did separate some batters because I think the White Ferns, they do need a bit of power coming through the ranks. But I don't think there's a standout youngster as far as powerful batting goes. There is Jess Watkin, though. And Jess Watkin has already played for the White Ferns. She is the biggest hitter outside the White Ferns right now. She hasn't been called up to any White Ferns squads recently, but she's always involved in the second-tier games, which makes me think that she's still on the radar as far as power hitting goes. I think she played a tour game against Sri Lanka and also featured in the North vs South series. She is a leader for Northern Districts, good off-spinner, and again, the biggest hitter, basically aside from Sophie Devine, in women's cricket in Aotearoa. So I'd watch out for Jess Watkin maybe developing back into the White Ferns mix. You've also got PJ Watkins. So I think you got Jess Watkin and PJ Watkins. PJ Watkins first burst onto the scene as a lefty seamer. Then she kind of ended up bowling lefty spin this season while batting a lot more. And she is a good, powerful batter. So I'd note down PJ Watkins as a powerful batter on the rise. Molly Penfold can smash a ball. I look forward to her development with the bat. And also Olivia Gain, who was part of my 10 best young cricketers. She has the power strokes through the offside, which I think is a very important observation for women's cricket in Aotearoa. Whereas we've always got the crafty batters. So the crafty batters to note, Caitlin Blakely for Otago always scores runs, Nancy Patel and Hannah Francis. To me, they're more of the power batters to watch out for. Same goes for the swing bowling. And if we're women's cricket, there's just less force through the crease when you're bowling. So my scientific takeaway from the experiments that I've done is that leads to more in-swing. So there's a lot of in-swing bowlers in Aotearoa. There's less outswing bowlers. So when I see outswing bowlers, that catches my eye the same way if I see a female cricketer blaze a shot over cover, like a lofted drive. So forceful seamers who can bowl a bit outswing with decent pace. Natasha Kadaya for Wellington, Jess Simmons for Canterbury, and Louisa Kotkamp for Otago. All three bowl with decent pace, and usually they're getting outswing. Actually, I was meditating on this, and I was like, this is what makes women's cricket so fun, because it's so different from men's cricket, and it's just like there's less force. So there's less force through the crease, which means less force through the ball, which means there's less force on the ball. There's less force hitting the ball. So the whole game of cricket just changes when in women's cricket. And I think that is something that I enjoy, but it makes observing these talents a lot easier because you're looking for key details. The last thing I'd say about cricket in Aotearoa is that I've done those top 10 lists. In those top 10 lists, I had, I think, roughly 5 honorable mentions. So there's 15 young cricketers mentioned. In the newsletter for the paid subscribers yesterday, I did 3 more. Now, there's a bit of give and take. One player in the extra category in the newsletter yesterday for the paid subscribers was in the honorable mentions. The other 5 were not. But then I also mentioned some guys and girls who were too old for the youngster category. So roughly, we've got 20 players in the youngster category on the rise in the men's and women's pipeline who have shown enough talent, enough performances in domestic cricket to put them on the radar. Those 20 players do not include the likes of Flora Devonshire, Izzy Sharp, Emma McLeod, Polly Ingalls, those players who became Brie Illing, those players who, Bella James as well, those players who entered the White Ferns. Nor do those 20 players on the men's side include Will O'Rourke, Nathan Smith, Ben Sears, Reece Murray, Muhammad Abbas, and so on and so on. So think about the Black Caps and the White Ferns. They've been refreshed with young talent. And over the past few weeks, I've talked, typed, pondered 20 more cricketers on both the pipelines who are on the rise. That's Aotearoa cricket as we exit the summer of 2024-2025.
Yeah, really. There's like, it's stacked. And something that also stands out from your descriptions there is that it's not just like, as you say, it's not just a whole bunch of crafty batters. There's also some hitters. It's not just a whole bunch of off spinners. There's also, you know, there's a couple of outswing bowlers you mentioned there. There's the inswing. Like, there's variety across the various players that have been picked out. And again, as you say too, like players who were picked out not just on pure promise alone, but also on performances in domestic cricket against players who are older and more experienced than them. So yeah, if anyone is fretting about like the direction that New Zealand cricket is heading in, I'd suggest they maybe stop doing that promptly, because nothing to worry about.
There is a little bit of worry for the Warriors after losing 3 games on the weekend. As we mentioned earlier in the podcast, straight up and down, full steak and cheese pie. This was a bad weekend for the Warriors. The Storm loss, like, that's normal. Like, let's be honest. If the Warriors play the Storm 10 games, I think the Storm are winning 8 of them.
Well, in recent form, they're winning all 10. It's like 17 games in a row or something, isn't it?
But I'm trying to be realistic. Like, I'm not going to come out
here.
here.
The next 10, maybe the Warriors might get 1 or 2. You know.
Yeah, well, it's like if we're playing a battle of chance. If you set up 10 games between the Storm and the Warriors throughout 2025, I'm saying the Storm win 8 of them, based on the fact that they've won the last 10 at least. And it's like, okay, no matter how the Warriors are tracking, no matter how well they're playing, no matter how bad they're playing, if they're playing the Storm in Melbourne, especially, but also in Auckland, they're going to lose. And if we're being a full steak and cheese honest about it, I'm not mad about it. It's okay. Because I like the Storm. Like, the Storm are just fun to watch. The Storm are one of the most entertaining rugby league teams of the past 10 years, at least. Well, not at least, because before that 10-year period, then you go back into the grisly stage of the Storm. But the Storm refreshed their style, and they are simply one of the most entertaining, fun teams to watch. And of course, they love Aotearoa. So the team who beat the Warriors, you had Jerome Hughes in the halves. He's from Wellington, one of the best halves in the NRL. You had Moses Leo at centre. He is from Auckland, the North Shore of Auckland, also from Rugby Union. There was no Will Walbrick. He's from Kawerau. There was Alec MacDonald of Niche Cage Favourite. He was on the bench. The Storm are really fun. I like the Storm. So I'm not mad at the loss, especially because it's to be expected. If we're keeping it a full steak and cheese, it is to be expected. But the Warriors also lost in Auckland to the Newtown Jets, who are the reserve grade team for the Sharks, and also lost to the Sharks under-21s in Auckland. So overall, it was a bad weekend for the Warriors. And it kind of got a little bit worse considering that James Fisher-Harris got injured. Sean Stickel-Klokstad had a head knock, and they play the Broncos on Saturday night. I was thinking, though, like, because I was looking at these stats, and on the bench, we had Bunty Afoa getting through 42 minutes. That's more than usual. Jackson Ford, 49 minutes. That's about usual for Jackson Ford. Dimitri Vaimunga, 41 minutes. That's more than usual. Leka Halasima, 36 minutes. That is more than usual. This, at some stage in the NRL season, you need to have your depth tested. And I think this is a good opportunity for the Warriors to force changes or just give other players an opportunity, because you can ride those ups and downs of your depth being tested because the NRL season is so long. So I think over the next couple of weeks, let me double check. Next week, they play the Broncos at home, and then I think they've got an Anzac Day game in Christchurch against the Knights of a little bit of concern, Fane. So it's not the worst time to have your depth tested, but in the NRL season, I think it's important to note you do need to have a period where your squad gets the game time. It needs. Last year, what was a major point of last season? The best Warriors wins came with their second-tier players. Wins over Panthers and the Dolphins. To be decent in the NRL, like, you're not going to have your full roster healthy and available for the whole season. And I think it sets you up for a strong back end of the season if you can give your entire group a little bit of game time. But Andrew Webster's not going to rotate the squad, right? Like, that's definitely not going to happen. So then you're looking at a situation where you make the most of times when you are forced to explore your depth, and that's what I'm looking forward to over the next couple of weeks, is the youngsters, the fringe players, the second tier players getting a few more opportunities as the injuries start to add up, as suspensions add up, and as the NRL season just settles into the grind. Which, when you look at, like, the again, the Australian media cycle, the NRL media cycle, it kind of overlooks how long and grinding the NRL season is, because you get caught up in these storylines every week, and you get caught up in these performances every week. And yet, the Penrith Panthers are 1-5, and people still think they can make the top 8. People still think they can contend in the NRL for a championship. Why is that? Because the season's so long that they still have a chance to do that. So you just got to ride these ebbs and flows and just keep your head down, keep working hard, as all sports people like to say.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is something that we've talked about a few times with Auckland FC, isn't it? Is Steve Corica doesn't rotate his squad very much, but he makes use of the things because the A-League's about the same amount of games as the NRL is. And you are going to have instances where Louis Verstraete's got a sore back this week or is suspended or whatever. Max Mata's out injured. You just little a guy, Marley Francois starts for a few weeks while Moreno's out, or here, there, or everywhere. Jesse Randall's had a little stint. Dan Hall misses a couple months with injury. Tommy Smith settles in. Tommy Smith goes back to the bench when Dan Hall returns. Sakai's missed a game or two. Callan Elliott comes in. I think there's Francis de Vries, Alex Paulson, and Guillermo Mai who have started every game, and that's it. Like, everyone else has at least come off the bench here, there, or somewhere. And that's the top team in the A-League. It's the same thing in the NRL, even more so, because you do have more little niggling injuries that are harder to play through just because it is a more more directly physical, brutal kind of sport. That's just going to happen, and you gotta roll with the punches. And that's almost a better way of doing it, rather than, because then you don't have to shake anything up. It's just a matter of someone's out, who can do that role. Here is the role for you. Get in there, do your thing. I don't know how someone is going to do a James Fisher-Harris thing for the next couple of weeks, depending on how long he's out for. So there might be a little bit of evolution required there, or adaptation required there. But that is the kind of thing that every team is going to face at some point throughout the NRL season, right? Someone's going to, in fact, for example, the Melbourne Storm have looked awesome, who started off the season almost scoring 50 points and a half against the Parramatta Eels, and then did a similar thing actually in that game to what they did against the Warriors, where maybe foot off the gas a little bit in the second half, damage done. But they have lost one game this season. I don't know if you remember that one. You obviously do remember which team it was that beat them. I will point out that the Dragons' best win of the season by miles did involve Jerome Hughes being out injured for the Melbourne Storm. You gotta roll with the punches there as well. They actually weren't able to do it in that case. They lost to the Dragons. Shame on them. But it's just another example of hardly anyone plays every game in this competition. You always got to have depth.
You do indeed, and shout out to the Dragons. That was I don't know if you've seen, but it's there's this. I have been watching a few clips of this guy Ty, part of the Arsenal fan TV crew, and there's this clip of him, and he's like, in his English accent, he's like, "To be fair, it was raining after a loss." And I just thought of that when you're talking about the Dragons versus the Storm, because if you're a Storm fan, you're like, it was raining. The pitch was a little bit greasy, a little bit wet. So shout out to the Dragons for playing wet weather footy. I've got two kind of footy style things here. You look at the top of the table, Bulldogs, Storm, Broncos, Raiders. And you got a bit of Rabbitohs there as well. But when I think of rugby league in 2025 in the NRL, I'm thinking hard and fast. H&F. You got to hit that shit hard and fast. That is the best way to play rugby league in 2025. You play direct, you play fast, and you play hard. You play hard with the ball, without the ball. I don't exactly know what I'm trying to say when I say hard. But it's like, the Bulldogs are the epitome of hard and fast. They're there to smash you. They're all mobile. They're all quick. They're all agile. They all do the game plan. And the game plan is to play hard and fast. The Storm, Harry Grant, Jerome Hughes, Cameron Munster, big forwards rolling forward, Xavier Coates on the edge. They are hard and fast, but slightly different because they do love to shift to their edges and make meters that way. Broncos and Raiders, they are hard and fast. Especially like the Broncos, they're hard and fast, but they've got some older halves, but they're hard and fast in the sense that they're going to attack you directly. They're going to do a chip and chase. They're going to kick in behind you. They got the short ball. They got the passing. Then you go Raiders, who are, again, to me, Bulldogs and Raiders are the headline acts of my hard and fast rant. The Raiders, they're very fast, but they all just get the ball, run, step, offload. It's all very direct. It's hard and fast. I think that's how you got to play rugby league in 2025. Less of the elaborate shapes out to the edges, less of the, oh, we're going to go over there, then we're going to come back over here, then we're going to move the ball here and try to manipulate your defense, which I think is that's how the Warriors can play their footy sometimes. But I think the best way to play footy is hard and fast. And when teams win, like when the Dragons win, when the Roosters beat the Broncos, I think they do so because either the conditions or the situation means they got to play a little bit more simply. And that simple style just means you play hard and fast. You get an offload, you run. You see space, you run. You see a gap, you run. The other little footy thing is passing. And this is something I think the Warriors do lack. They got a very good passing dummy half in Wade Egan, but Luke Metcalf's not a fantastic passer. Chanel Harris-Tavita isn't a fantastic passer either. Shans Nickel-Klokster, he is not a relatively fantastic passer at the fullback position. Of course, they're all better passers than me or Fisher Harris, but they're not excellent passers for their positions. And I think that's something that Te Maire Martin is. And when I think back to the Tigers game, they were scary because Galvin's a good passer, Coruscant's a good passer, Luai's a good passer, Buller's a good passer. So they can move the ball to space quickly and efficiently. I'm not sure if the Warriors have that passing skill set shining right now, but it is something they have in their system, especially with Te Maire Martin. I think that's something that Te Maire Martin offers the Warriors NRL team. The real thing I want to talk about with the Warriors is a situation. And it's all a little bit goofy, but also very impressive. And it all revolves around the Warriors signing Jye Linnane from the Newcastle Knights. Jye Linnane. He had the honor of being announced by the Warriors with a paragraph about his back-to-back major knee injuries. I'm not sure if you've seen that much in your journey of following sports signings. Like, we're going to sign a player, and in the announcement, we are going to mention that he's had some major knee injuries back-to-back recently, which is probably why we're signing him, because the Knights might not want to invest in someone who's had back-to-back major knee injuries, but we want him. So that was fun.
It has happened once that I can think of, which was Ryan Thomas when he left PSV after consecutive knee injuries and then went back to Pek Swala, his old team, and they signed him obviously with a sort of like, here's a club legend and we're going to help him get his career back on track idea. Spoiler alert, he then had another major knee injury since then, but he's back fit now. He's raring to go. So it might take a couple years, but you can get over that.
No, but what did they specifically mention?
They would have, because it's the only reason he signed with them was because he was too injured to stay at the bigger club. But I think maybe the vibe was a little bit different when you're talking about an experienced player versus an up-and-coming fella.
Yeah, but I don't think it's even close, because this paragraph also, the Warriors, they were so in tune with Linnane that they knew, this is where we go into the quote, Linnane was impressive in preseason training with the first grade squad until his plans were ended by an ACL knee injury in January after coming back from the same injury in his other knee last year. So the Warriors knew that Linnane was impressive in the Knights preseason training, and of course that he had back-to-back ACL injuries in both knees. So that's cool. Jye Linnane seems like a fast half, which, okay, I don't really care about Jye Linnane, to be honest, but the Warriors signed him. First situation that this throws up, very goofy situation, which I believe was amplified this week by the appearance of Ryder Williams in the Knights jersey Flegg team. Now, there's a couple of riders floating around, just the same way there's a couple of Jets floating around, a couple of Jyes, and various other names. But Ryder Williams was number 23 on the Knights bench. Now, I believe this is the same Ryder Williams who had a development contract with the Gold Coast Titans as a 17-year-old. Maris Saints Jr. from Auckland. And this is the same Knights jersey Flegg that rolled out a halves combination of Cullen Gray from Whangarei and Hami Loza, who was a Mangere East Aotearoa junior from De La Salle College. So the Knights jersey Flegg team, if I'm correct about Ryder Williams, had 3 halves from Aotearoa in the same team. Now, they can't all play halves together, but they at least had a starting halves combination in their jersey Flegg team. And earlier in the season, their SG Ball team, there was a game when the halves combination was Hami Loza and Ryder Crosswell. Ryder Crosswell's from Palmerston North. Danny Vick Jr. went to Palmerston North Boys High School.
A different Ryder.
Different Ryder. Shout out to the Striders, shout out to the Riders, and everyone else doing their thing. So there is
Jesse Ryder's the one that springs to mind, especially if you're talking a guy from Palmerston North, that CD region. I don't know if the ages would quite line up yet. We might be too young to have players named after Jesse Ryder, but yeah, that was the name that pops in my head when I hear that.
CD, correct. I'm not sure if Jesse Ryder is actually from Palmerston North.
I don't think so, no. But
you can do your own research while I'm spinning this yarn. But his CD is correct. So there is a situation where the Newcastle Knights have 4 young halves from Aotearoa in their system. Meanwhile, the Warriors are signing young Aussie halves. That's just very, very goofy. Because on the one hand, and this is something we've talked a wee bit about, on the one hand, the Warriors are saying, New Zealand halves aren't good enough. We want the halves who come from the Australian system because they're probably better. Meanwhile, the Knights are signing halves from New Zealand. Why are the Knights signing halves from New Zealand to play in their junior system? Because they think the New Zealand halves are better. So you've got 2 different NRL clubs with 2 very different perspectives on halves from Aotearoa. And when I throw in Bronson Reuben and Cassius Tia, who are both in the Bulldogs system, and the fact that the Warriors actually have a whole bunch of halves from Aotearoa in their system, Maui Winatana Patalaseo, you've got Caleb Lehman, you've got Tamaira Martin, and you've got some others in the under-17 Warriors team. Both halves are from Aotearoa, and pretty much the whole under-17 team who are in the finals once again of the Harold Matthews Cup, that old team is from Aotearoa. But we do have some uncertainty around a bloke by the name of Jack Thompson, who was a mid-season arrival last year for the under-17 Warriors team who went on to win the championship, who joined from the Newcastle Knights. But we haven't seen Jack Thompson this year, so I don't want to do any deep dive about Jack Thompson, but there's a very strange crossover where the Knights like halves from Aotearoa, the Bulldogs seem to like halves from Aotearoa, but the Warriors keep signing halves from Australia. But the credit to the Warriors, they still have a bunch of halves from Aotearoa. If anyone keeping track, halves who the Warriors have signed from Australia, you got Luke Metcalf, who was the start of the wave, and then Luke Hanson was next. Jet Cleary followed him, and that was around the time when Jack Thompson joined from the Knights. Then they got Tanner Boyd, and there's also another dude by the name of James Marriott, who was born in New Zealand, but the Warriors signed him from the Sunshine Coast Falcons. So that's all a bit goofy. It's just a strange situation happening. And you can add Jye Linnane to that group of halves that the Warriors have signed. Jye Linnane, like Luke Hanson, like Jet Cleary, like Tanner Boyd, like James Marriott, and a bunch of other young Aussies have all left Australia to come to New Zealand as young Australians. So we can have opinions about the Warriors, right? Like this is, like we've all got different thoughts, different opinions. But when I see young Australians being recruited by the Warriors and embracing their development pathway with the Warriors, that is, what was the term I wrote down here? Might not have written it down as I wanted to. That's a positive reinforcement about the Warriors system. So you can say whatever you want about the Warriors system, but if young Aussies think the Warriors system's good enough for them, it's good enough for me. Part of those young Aussies, you've got Jet Cleary, Ivan Cleary's son. So if Ivan Cleary thinks that the Warriors system is the best place for his son, it's good enough for me. This is a major trend that's happened with the Warriors during the two Andes era. Part of it is because they've just got more teams, right? Like if you got more teams, you got more spots to fill. So you're going to be recruiting more Australians. The NRL team has always had a few Australians and always had pretty good Australians. So there's nothing different about Mitch Barnett, Jackson Ford, Luke Metcalf in this context. There's nothing different or unique. Kurt Capewell. Those are the same guys that the Warriors have always been able to recruit. But now they are recruiting young Aussies to move to Auckland. So it's a myth that Australians don't want to come to New Zealand now because young Aussies are coming every year. But then I look like, okay, Tanner Boyd will play NRL this season. But he came to the Warriors, and there was a nice little vlog about him, off-day type of vibe from the Warriors. He and other Warriors, they're never content to play reserve grade. They always want to play NRL, play high level. But Tanner Boyd came to the Warriors. He's a Gold Coast kid. He played for Keebra Park. He was at the Gold Coast Titans, competing for an NRL spot there. He left his hometown to come to the Warriors, where he's playing reserve grade and training hard. He didn't come to the Warriors to be a starting halfback to take on a better opportunity. No, he came to the Warriors to play reserve grade and compete for an opportunity. So not only are young Aussies coming to the Warriors, they are coming to the Warriors under the umbrella of you need to be part of the development system. Jet Cleary didn't come to the Warriors because he's got an NRL spot available to him. No, he came to the Warriors to develop. He's playing under 21s. Then he might play New South Wales Cup. Then he might progress into the NRL mix. Luke Hanson didn't come to the Warriors because there was an NRL spot open for him. He came to the Warriors and he started in Jersey Flegg. Now he's playing New South Wales Cup. These young Aussies are coming to the Warriors to be part of the Warriors system. That's only a positive reflection on the Warriors system. And I found that very interesting because that's when I take my own opinion out of it. I'm just observing and I'm learning and I'm like, well, I mean, if this is good enough for a bunch of young Aussies who know more than me about rugby league, and in one case, their father just won 4 championships in a row as part of the best development system the NRL's ever seen, if it's good enough for him, it's good enough for me. There's another little wrinkle, though, because the Warriors have also brought players back to Aotearoa. There's the easy examples at the top level, Fisher Harris, Aaron Clark, and so on. But now we've had Dayon Amatuanai, who's a Te Aroha junior who also spent time at Whiti, which I think is Kapiti Coast. He's come back from the Panthers. William Whakaton was at the Warriors. Amatuanai was at the Warriors before going to the Panthers. He went to Redcliffe Warriors, then the Panthers. Whakaton Mafe was with the Warriors before the pandemic, goes to Australia, comes back. He's now on the New South Wales Cup team. Yeah. Two easy examples. Excuse me. Two easy examples right there. But you've also got, this is a weird crossover with the Knights, because the Knights recruited Jerome Falamoy from Southern Cross campus, along with Elijah Salisa Moana. They were buddies with Leka Halasima at Southern Cross campus. But now Jerome Falamoy's come back to the Warriors, and he's playing Jersey Flegg for the Warriors. A few weeks ago, he was playing Jersey Flegg for the Knights. So the Warriors are able to recruit young Aussies, but they're also able to bring Kiwi-NRL juniors, former Warriors juniors, back to Auckland. Again, that's all very positive reflections about the Warriors system. And so we've got the halves in the Knights Jersey Flegg team. Then we've got Jerome Falamoy leaving the Knights Jersey Flegg team to come back to the Warriors Jersey Flegg team. And the Knights Jersey Flegg team still had Tamakai Moana Whare Aorere as a starting prop. He's from Te Puke, Rotorua Boys High School. Te Kaio Cranwell, edge forward. He's from Christchurch, Linwood Junior, I believe. Jaden Harris, some sort of relation to James Fisher Harris, I think. He's from up north. He's on the bench. Sasaya Latu, he's on the wing. So the Knights still have an abundance of Kiwi-NRL juniors in their system, even though there is great crossover with the Warriors and, of course, the halves situation. That's just something I'm just trying to come to grips with at the Warriors. Some of it makes sense. Like if young Aussies are coming to the Warriors because they want to develop and be part of the system, that is easy to make sense of because there's a good development system there. The half stuff and the crossover with the Knights and all of that stuff, it's just a bit weird and goofy, but it's happening and it's important to talk about it because you're not going to see anyone else talk about it, you know?
No, that is a strange coincidence. Like, I almost wonder if it's one of those things where maybe it's like a grass is greener thing where you're thinking like the halves you sign from outside the system might be better than the ones you develop yourself, but then you end up just swapping them with someone else who's thinking the same thing. But I don't know. I come back on the point you said though about like them, especially when one of them is Jet Cleary, Ivan Cleary's son, leaving the Panthers, no doubt with advice from his father involved, one way or another, to join the Warriors system specifically, where he probably, with that name and that the reputation of that Panther system, probably could have gone anywhere. He probably could have had his pick from any club in the NRL. What's the word? The way that reinforces what the Warriors are doing is, I think, that seems like an overwhelmingly positive thing. And I also think there's a lot to get out of the types of players, especially when you're talking about halves who often have to have a leadership role. Even if you are a young half, you're in charge of a lot of the way in which the style of the team in attack in particular, specifically in attack. I think there's a lot to say about the type of personalities as well that would take on that challenge and say, like, I'm going to move to another country to try, get the next step in my game, whatever. I think that also is a sign of maturity in its own way as well, in a way which is kind of exactly what you want from those types of players as well, is to have players who are willing to take on a challenge, because it will be a challenge being in NRL halves if you get to that point, regardless of what team you're playing for. Biggest challenge of all, apparently, is being a Warriors half playing against the Melbourne Storm, but at least you only have to do that once or twice a season. playing for anyone is difficult, playing in any position, but in halves is just an expectation, there's a spotlight. So I think having the types of personalities as well, that would leave the comfort zone in order to jump on to the Warriors bandwagon also seems like something where it's like those are the types of guys you want.
And that's especially the case for the younger dudes like Hansen, Cleary, Linnane, Jack Thompson, if he's still around. The key dude, I think, for me, aside from the Ivan Cleary wrinkle, is Tanner Boyd. To me, he's the main learning point because, again, he came to the Warriors and he seems chuffed to be grinding away in New South Wales Cup with the opportunity of pushing for NRL selection. Tanner Boyd wasn't signed to leave his home with a promise that you're going to play NRL. So that shows you that there's something more on offer. Something more on offer might just be a little bit of cash on the side. It might be like a good little side job. It might be a free house, a free car. It might be other little bonus goodies. But it could also be, we're a good club, we look after you, and we develop players to get better. A few other Kiwi-NRL things that happen. Tyrone Thompson debut for the Knights. So I'm a bit iffy on the Knights, but we did have the fantastic moment of Tyrone Thompson starting at prop with Leo Thompson. Fantastic. That gave me goosebumps. Fortunately, the Knights suck and nothing really happened there, but it was a good moment for Tyrone Thompson. And part of the Knights' kind of goofiness, it looks as though Sebastian Su'a is now making an early departure to go to the Dolphins. Sebastian Su'a, Mount Albert Jr., he was recruited by the Knights initially, but as a lot of them do, leaves the Knights just as he's coming into the NRL bracket. And that's probably where Tyrone Thompson's got his opportunity, or why the Knights were willing to let go of Sebastian Su'a. Joseph Tapine, part of that fantastic Raiders team. What's he done in his last 4 seasons? Just casually averaging over 150 meters per game in 4 consecutive seasons, tackling with 93% efficiency or higher. And in the 3 seasons prior to this season, he has had at least 45 offloads. He's already got 13 offloads in 4 games. You do the math, how many offloads that is per game, because I'm talking shit here. Mawane Hiroti, 2 games, 2 tries, 179 meters per game. Good job in the centers for the Sharks. Nofahu White, Bay Roskell Jr., 33 minutes per game last year for the Roosters, 52.3 minutes per game this season for the Roosters. Salesi Foketi, Manurewa Jr., 19 years old, averaging 36.3 minutes per game. Watch out for Jeremy Marshall-King from Whakatane, because he is the best hooker available to the Kiwis. And he is in a nice little groove with the Dolphins. Starford To'a, Mount Wellington Jr. from Auckland, Tongan international. He is also in a career best zone for the Tigers. Really enjoy watching Starford To'a at centre, averaging 129 meters per game, 91.3% tackling. He has, though they are both career highs, and he's also got 5 tries, 4 try assists in 5 games. Centers especially, I kind of want to see as many try assists as tries. Just something little statistical there. And of course, the big man, Bombadil, Alec MacDonald, he now has more tackle breaks and offloads than missed tackles this season. 2 tackle breaks, 2 offloads, 1 missed tackle. And he's made 123 tackles. So he's made 123 tackles with 1 missed tackle. That's why I love Alec MacDonald. Let's go football. Where Chris Wood is back on the field, but Nottingham Forest had a loss to Everton. And Marko Stamenic is he's got to be the most winningest Kiwi footballer in the world. Is that a correct, actual, factual statement? The Chris Wood statement is he did come back from injury. He did play for Nottingham Forest, and they did lose to Everton. You've been tracking the Champions League stuff, so that might be taking a hit, but it is actual factual that Marko Stamenic is the most winningest Kiwi footballer, forget the world, in the whole wide universe.
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of anyone else who even rivals him, really. Like, it's 2 years, well, three seasons ago, including this season, he was playing for FC Copenhagen in Denmark. They won the league, they won the cup. Then he moves to Serbia for Crvena Zvezda, aka Red Star Belgrade. They won the league, they won the cup. Now he's playing for Olympiacos in Greece. They've just won the league with 3 games to spare. They're in the cup final in a couple of weeks' time. Like, he's won consecutive league titles in 3 different countries 3 years in a row. He might also turn that into consecutive league and cup titles, like consecutive doubles there, in 3 different countries 3 years in a row. I don't know how anyone could be more of a winning player than I don't know how it would be possible to even research this because there's too many footballers around the place, but like, find me another non-national of those countries who like in European football has won 3 consecutive doubles in 3 different countries 3 years in a row. I can't even imagine that happening alone, and Marko Stamenic is probably about to do that. So, like, unreal collection of medals that he already has at a relatively young age. There is the caveat that he's not playing as much as he would like in Greece. He's actually not playing much at all at the moment. He's mostly getting his games in those cup games, but the fact they've won the title with 3 games to spare, I would hope that at least gives him a little bit, he can rotate things a little bit now. They will do that too because they've got to prepare for the cup final. So hopefully that gives Stamenic a few more games before the season is out, but he's not going back to Olympiacos next year anyway. So we'll see what happens there, because he might just go back to Nottingham Forest, do some preseason and hang around. He might be awesome for Nottingham Forest and they just want to keep him around. I think more likely is he might need another steadying year of a second loan, in which case probably you'd want to send him to a championship club in England. But maybe you just send him to, like, I don't know, we get this word around that wherever Marko Stamenic plays, they win. You might get a nice little queue of clubs saying, "Oh, we're overdue a league and cup double. Why don't you come play for us?" And we'll see if the good luck charm can continue. Because if he's not playing in Greece next year, well, we might as well try and make it 4 in a row, right? Like, why not be greedy about it?
I get what you're saying, and especially if you're any other club in the world and you want to win, you got to sign Marko Stamenic, the big Uso Bombadil, because he's a winning footballer. But I want to see him at Nottingham Forest. I want to see him training with Tyler Binden and the Woodsman. That's what I want to see. Just going back to that Ty video, they're talking about Arsenal, and he's like, terrible defending. We mustn't forget it's been raining. So I think that's just search Ty TY mustn't forget it, because it's a good old giggle, and I feel like that sums up my Wellington Phoenix vibe. Like,
well, it's always raining in Wellington, so I guess they've just got the constant excuse. I don't
know. Windy
probably, as well.
It's probably a better one, but Wellington Phoenix lost both games this weekend. Wellington Phoenix, our most concerning pocket in New Zealand sport, but we mustn't forget it's been raining and it's been windy for Wellington. So shout out to the Wellington Phoenix. How did you assess? I just want to keep it kind of broad Wellington Phoenix vibration bombatul thing here. How did you assess the Wellington Phoenix as a club, their performances this week after Bombadil over here brought up some concerns about how they are poised. For those who weren't listening, for those who don't know, you got a team that isn't winning as much, or two teams that aren't winning as much. You got a women's team that's never made the A-League finals. You got a men's team that's gone backwards with a lot of nuance, a lot of context, a lot of stuff we need to understand. But you've got two coaches who are coming off contract. You got a wide variety of players in the mix. It's all a bit messy. That's why they are concerning. And then they go and lose 2 games this weekend. They couldn't even get a draw to kind of dampen my concern, to put out the stench of the poo pocket. But I also don't want to overstate it. Like, if I am overstating it, let me know. But how did you assess this weekend's footy for the Wellington Phoenix as a club, given what we talked about last week?
I mean, I don't think the results from this weekend changed anything, which is not a good thing. So I'm saying it's not like, the blokes losing against Melbourne Victory, the women going to Canberra and losing 1-0 away from home, as they always do, always a 1-0 or 2-1 defeat away from home every single time. It's just like, that doesn't change anything about my perspective of those teams at all, because it's exactly what I thought was going to happen, right? So the fact that they haven't changed the course, like, that doesn't make me think less of them, but it also means they aren't changing the course, which is heading in a direction which is not where they want to be going. And yeah, obviously, like, the blokes have had a lot of player turnover. They have a lot of player turnover every year, but this year in particular, it seems like, because some of the players they lost were local guys they were relying on, academy grads, like, they just weren't able to get as much from the next wave, who probably aren't ready yet, because those guys, like Sermon and Paulson and Ben Old, came through so quickly. So not suddenly, like, they had a few years brewing, but it's just once they started getting those first team reps, or first 11 reps last year, they were so good so immediately that they didn't even have time to develop the next lot of guys behind them. They ideally, for a team building perspective, you'd have kept those players around for 2, maybe even in 1 or 2 cases 3 years, to allow them to set the example and give you some room to build. But that obviously didn't happen. And there are things that are going to have to be learnt about that, because this is a development club. They want to bring through their academy players. They want to be able to sell them. They want to be able to fund the club through those player sales, which is kind of the only way they can do that. Like, they lose money every year otherwise. But there has to be a balance as well, and you can't just be selling all your best young players immediately. Like, maybe you need to hang on to them for a year or two. And something that Chiefy has said at times as well is that often those players are better for having a couple years in the A-League. Like, not just you come in, you do great first year, and then you move somewhere else. Like, actually having 2 or 3 or 4 years of consolidating your performances, which is why I've eased up maybe a little bit on it would have been nice to see Alex Paulson, after he left the Phoenix, go straight to England and maybe have a loan somewhere there where he can get used to that style of play a little bit more. But also, while it feels like he's just repeating himself by having another year in the A-League, he is repeating himself as the best goalkeeper in the A-League. So it's not like that's a bad thing. He's just continuing to work hard and iron through little aspects of his game, and he's probably going to be a better goalkeeper next year for that experience, especially if he can, win a title with Auckland FC. I think that would certainly boost his confidence and his development both, and his reputation. So, like, yeah, of course there's caveats and stuff, but it's just the Phoenix men feel like they've gone maybe a little bit too far in that, and they've been caught out by it. I suspect that there is, I don't know if it's a hope or a suspicion. I'm not sure which side of it we're on yet, but I think there is definitely a possibility that they will just they can learn some lessons from what they did here. Maybe recruit a little bit better, maybe try get a few more players in the prime of their careers, but also bring on the young guys who have gotten good opportunities this season. Matt Sheridan, Nathan Walker, Luke Brooks-Smith, etc. Both the Kelly Heald brothers. Bring in those kind of guys with another year under their belts. So they're gonna step up a little bit more. They're gonna be a little bit more ready to fulfill the roles that maybe they were asked to this season before they were ready to entirely. I can see that being a thing where you don't have to shake up the whole processes, right? You don't have to shake up the whole direction you're on. You just need to make a few tweaks here, there, and yeah, recruit a little bit better. Maybe spread the sails out a little bit more, all these kind of things. The women feels more concerning in that way, because I was watching them in that Canberra game, and I was watching the same performance I've seen for the last 2 years, pretty much every time, where slow first half, they concede, much better second half. They're pretty dominant in that second half. They whip the ball. They had a lot of possession in Canberra's half, whipping the ball into the area, lots of crosses, lots of quite a few shots. And yet all the way through that, I was thinking, I don't believe they're going to score a goal. I'm trying to think, what is the tweak I would make if I was a coach, or what would I like to see Paul Temple do here? And I can't think of anything. I don't know what he would do to make this group of players be more effective. And it just feels like, yeah, it feels like them as a team that is a little bit, I don't know what happened to small ball, but I remember saying last season it felt like that was an overrated thing that really only worked if Macy Fraser was involved. Macy Fraser's left. I don't see that small ball stuff happening at all this season. But they are definitely a team that has like a lot of local youngsters. Same thing. They want to be a development team. They want to be able to develop their own players and bring them through the different pathways, and this team and that team and the next team into the A-League. But they feel so stuck in the like process-driven way of thinking, where I mean, I think you just need a few more players out there that want to shred the playbook and just go and like try score some goals. Rather than everyone being like, well, we'll try next time, we'll pass it. Where am I supposed to? Everything's caught up in sort of like this little minutiae of thinking, and they don't have enough players who just have that kind of like ferocious attitude. Which you could argue the fellas actually have had a lot of that same issue outside of maybe Corbin Piper, who everyone loves because he's the opposite of this. He's the guy who just goes out there and jumps over guys twice his height and wins headers and does crazy stuff like that. But yeah, the women feel so stuck in that in the way that they're trying to play, that the bigger picture is almost a little bit lost there. And I don't know how you fix that necessarily, outside of just maybe signing players of a slightly different profile and not trying to sign a whole bunch of players who everyone has a midfielder's skill set and can do little like touch and pass stuff and whatever. You might need to just actually sign a few players who maybe aren't as technically good, but will have that knack of popping up in the right place and, are desperate to score goals and things like that, because I don't see a lot of desperation in how they play, and I think that is a fairly significant concern, because they were close to the finals last year. They've been close to the finals this year, but unfortunately last year and this year feel almost exactly the same, and that's, if you're staying still, you're going backwards. That's not a good thing.
And we don't know who's going to be coaching either team.
And we don't know who's going to be coaching either team. Yeah. Although I will say their reserve teams, which is a little bit complicated on the women's side of it, because the men's side of it, their reserve team is just the under-20s they play in the men's Central League. They've won 3 games out of 3. They've scored 11 goals. They've conceded 1. So they're actually tearing up in the men's Central League. On the women's side of it, they have an under-20s team that plays in the National League. For the last 2 years, they have done, same as the blokes do, but they don't play in the Women's Central League. They play in the Boys Capital Development League. So they're playing in, originally it was the under-17s, but under-17 boys is close to men's size and physicality and athleticism. So they kept losing games there and not getting to develop like they should. So they dropped it last year to the under-15s. They're going to be there again. So that's their reserve team. But this year they've put their third team, so the under-18s, are playing in the Women's Central League against Wellington United, Waterside Croydon, etc., etc., etc. And they've played 3 games in that division. This is the Wellington Phoenix under-18s women, so effectively the third rung on the ladder. I don't know what the equivalent is, that like SG Ball or whatever that would be for, or the one above that. I don't know, whatever. for NRL. But they've played 3 games. They've won 3 games. They've scored 22 goals, I think, and conceded 1. So they're absolutely shredding everybody in that one. So both of the 2 Central League teams that the Phoenix have are doing amazing. Like this is their academy players. These are players who aren't quite ready for A-League now, but will be in a couple of years. They're doing awesome. Just the A-League teams that are letting everyone down at the moment.
The other A-League team from Aotearoa, New Zealand, is Auckland FC, and they dropped points in their latest draw. But I don't know, like, is there any difference in the draws if you go from like 2-1 up to 2-2 or 2-0 down to 2-2? Because we did poke fun at them, the label of them dropping points for a draw, and this is another game in which they drop some points at the top of the A-League ladder, but it feels completely different because they came from behind to get the draw, and they are still top of the ladder. They got a massive undefeated streak. What is their undefeated streak off the top of your head?
12 games, I think they're up to now. Quite a long time.
And
although, you know what a weird fact is? Because Auckland FC have drawn 5 of their last 6 games now, which is keeping them undefeated. That's fine. Like that's grinding out points, especially a draw, like you say, on the weekend where they were 2-0 down. But a weird fact is, since they beat the Wellington Phoenix 6-1 in the 3rd derby game, the Wellington Phoenix and Auckland FC, who seem to be going in completely different directions, they've actually had the same amount of wins since that game.
But in true Bombadil fashion, the magical vibrations are completely different for the 2 teams, and that is because Auckland FC, they've only lost 2 games this season, and they are the only team who has lost less than 6 games with their 2 losses at the top of the A-League ladder. I don't know if there's anything new. Like, we did see another good performance from Logan Rogerson, another game where Marley Francois got lots of game time on the left edge. Verstrada was in the midfield. I think it was a full-strength back 4. You did mention a little Tommy Smithwood and I shift up front, though.
Yeah, the last like 5 minutes while they were hoping to, maybe snatch a winner from that one, they were clearly out of strikers. They'd run out of others options. So instead of Tommy Smith coming on in his usual sit in the back 3 kind of closer role, they just chucked him up front by the looks of it. Quite a few set pieces in the last few minutes, so it didn't always look like that, because obviously he's still going to come back for defensive corners and all that stuff, and he's going to go up for attacking corners regardless. But yeah, it did look like they were just chucking him up front as I guess the makeshift striker, no Max Mata, just another tall fella out there to win some headers, I suppose.
Don't expect many runs in behind the defense from old Tommy Smithwood and I, but that's all right. He's a set piece master. Other end of the set pieces, of course, is someone like Francis de Vries. You have been hot on the Cam Howison placement, though, which, again, to me, this feels like another thing of Steve Corica just putting his players in different positions, different roles throughout a long season. But you want to see Cam Howison a bit deeper in the midfield. I kind of feel like there's so many bodies that it's hard to get these guys into their preferred role. But well, that's happening because Max Mata isn't playing. And you are also big on the importance of Max Mata. So do you have any kind of clear thoughts about that attacking motion? Like, we know Auckland FC, Rogerson and Sakai down the right flank, very good combining, interchanging, overlapping. We know Francis de Vries on the left edge, how he's going to be a fantastic crosser. We know there's a bit of creativity in the midfield with especially when Mai is playing alongside Mata. Have you seen anything recently to update that kind of attacking motion observation for Auckland FC?
Well, I don't know. I mean, well, you mentioned that we've seen a fair bit of, Cam Howison's often been, the last couple of games, he's been used as the secondary striker alongside Guillermo Mai, which It's not really ideal for either of them because we kind of established that Mai is better when he's given more room to roam, and Howison is better when he's a little bit deeper. And he's probably better known as more of a traditional, just actual midfielder, playing outside the penalty areas in both directions. But he's certainly, like Auckland City, those teams were always heavily dominant on the ball. So he was, even if he was playing it as a more defensive role, he's still getting the ball outside the penalty area for the other team. And looking to pick creative passes, find guys in the box, whipping in some crosses maybe from different angles, and certainly looking to thread those through balls and stuff. That's the strength of his game. That is the stuff he does the best, is his ability to pick those passes out, to see them, like to see the runner in the box in a little bit of space and get the ball to his feet. But Guillermo Mai is not necessarily going to make those runs. And they had Mali Francois, who likes to cut in field and try to shoot a whole lot. And they had Rogerson doing all right on the side, but they actually subbed him off at halftime, which I thought was weird. And Howison, actually, they subbed both of them. So I think it was more tactical. It was just kind of changing the shape rather than these guys are playing badly. But I don't think that's a great fit for Howison. My suspicion is it's one of those ones where it's like, yeah, if Max Mata was available, he's probably starting, and you don't have the conversation. Even if Nader Moreno was available to start, he did play off the bench in this game. Maybe that changes the picture as well, and you might find some different way of doing things. Maybe Francois plays off the striker or something, I don't know, or Jesse Randall comes back in, I don't know. You got options, but my suspicion is that maybe Steve Corrigan just felt like Cam Howison's been training well all season. He's one of the older, more experienced guys in that squad, and he just deserves he deserves more minutes that he's not necessarily going to get in his preferred position because there are other guys around. Because even if you want to put a midfielder in that type of role as a number 10 / second number 9, I mean, Jake Brimmer just feels like a better option in that role anyway than Cam Howison does. But yeah, I think maybe this is just a little window of opportunity for Cam Howison, who hasn't played as much as he would like, and maybe even as much as his coach feels he deserves, just because there's that many other players around. Here's your chance to give you a little bit of a run. The Francois stuff feels a little bit more like an audition for him, of like, here's an opportunity to show that you deserve more minutes. Like, this isn't just these are the minutes that are available so you can have them. This is you auditioning to try get more on top of this. And I don't know that that's gonna happen for him. I mean, mostly because Moreno's just better. Moreno's been really good for them, and he's gonna return to the starting 11 once he's fit enough and ready to go. But there's no reason to rush anything at the moment. I think the conclusion I would take from that is that they've been close to their first 11 through pretty much through the whole season. They've been close to their first 11, but I don't know that they've had their first 11 very often. Which at this point we can probably say is I was going to say the team that started the 6-1 win against the Phoenix, but Dan Hall wasn't playing that game. So if you had Dan Hall there with we know what the back five is: Paulson, Hall, and Pinecker at CBs, Franny de Vries on one side, Hiroki Sakai on the other side, probably Vestrada, Gallegos in the midfield, Nader Moreno on one side, Logan Rogerson on the other side, Guillermo Mai playing off Max Mata. That feels like their best 11, right? And it also seems as though I'd have to check the numbers. Maybe I'll check this in the email if I have a look through and get the specifics of it. But it feels like there's always been one or two guys missing from that equation in the last few weeks, but not missing in a way where it's like you have to come up with something better. More missing in a way where it's like, well, stop gaps. This 1 week, 2 weeks, this guy's out injured. We're not going to risk him. We're not going to rush Moreno back in the starting lineup. We're sitting top of the table in a good position here. Let's make sure everyone's ready to go for the actual finals. And then I suspect we see that first 11 playing as much as possible. And I think there is a difference with Auckland FC. I think there is a thing where like there is a drop-off when you put other players in those things. It's not even necessarily a skill thing. It's maybe just like the balance of that team is really good when they have everyone available like that. and taking one or two guys out and putting in someone like, Francois a different player than Moreno. Jesse Randall's a different player than Max Mata. Cam Howison's a different player than Jesse Randall or Max Mata. It just changes the balance a little bit, and maybe that is to blame for them being, because they're not a team that was necessarily a couple, Phoenix game aside, they're not really a team that's blowing sides away. They're built on being a very good defensive team and then scoring timely goals. So that does maybe leave a margin for error that isn't massive, and a few little tweaks here or there can maybe tip things up a little bit. So I guess the conclusion of that is that I don't think they're anything of a worse team for having drawn 5 of their last 6 games. I just think they've been missing a couple players each time, and I don't think those players are going to continue to be missing once it comes to the crunch time knockout games.
You did mention the Wellington Phoenix reserves, but we've also got the Auckland FC reserves. How have they been tracking in the local footy scene in relation to being top of the league in the A-League?
Well, the opposite of the Phoenix having good reserves and bad A-League teams is that the Auckland FC have they have the best A-League team, and their reserves are, for a reserve team, they're doing all right. For a brand new reserve team that isn't building off of previous years like those Knicks teams are, they haven't won a game yet, but I think they did have a draw against Fencibles, I think, in week 1, and they've not been thrashed except for this weekend. They did actually get thrashed. I think they lost 5-2 to Auckland United, who looked pretty good. Auckland United did the thing I was talking about with the Wellington Saints and basketball, where it's like they've just built a team that's very specifically, we're not going to take any excuses for missing National League qualification this season like we did last year. So they've, for example, signed Emiliano Tade, who I thought was retired. I was told he was retired. He's come out of retirement to play for Auckland United, and he's scored in all 4 games that he's played so far. Plus, they've got some good signings, guys returning from overseas like Dre Vollenhoven and a few young fellas that they're bringing through. Luca Lim's had a very good start. He's a Kiwi lad, but he's of Cambodian heritage, and I think he's actually been involved. Certainly, he has an age grade stuff for Cambodia. I think he might even be not that far away from Cambodia's first team, but I'm not sure. Don't know the selection intricacies of Cambodia, but there's a good young player there who's been scoring some goals as well. So.
Cool stuff happening outside of Auckland FC, but who has been the best young player for Auckland FC in their reserves teams that you're watching out for as progressing into that A-League group?
It does seem like there is a gap between the reserves and the first team, but you are seeing a few of those scholarship players bridging that gap. So like Finn McKinley's played quite a few games, Adama Koulibaly's played a few games. We haven't seen any of the over 20s players yet, so I wondered if maybe Liam Gillian might get some minutes there, or if Louis Toomey might get some minutes there. I think both of them, from what I gather, they both played preseason games with the reserves, but neither of them have been seen yet for the actual Northern League stuff. They've cycled through 3 different goalkeepers in 4 games, so that's interesting. They're keeping things keeping things funky and giving everyone a chance there. Funkiest part of that is that they had a guy they signed from Fencibles, Eli Jones, who played in the game against Fencibles, and then they had I think Joe Knowles played in the game. He was signed from Eastern Suburbs. He played in the game against Eastern Suburbs. Blake Callanan was signed from Auckland United, and he didn't play in the game against Auckland United, so I thought that might happen, but instead that was another Joe Knowles one. Joe Knowles is probably the 3rd choice keeper. He'd be the guy who, if Michael Vowd or Alex Paulson got injured, he would go into a match day squad. So good to see him getting some minutes. But yeah, Ralph Rutherford's done some nice things. He's one that stood out a little bit. But I think you're probably looking at the scholarship guys there, like McKinley, like Ollie Middleton, like Jonty Bidwa, Adama Koulibaly. Sure, there's someone else I'm missing, but etc. Cody Phoenix isn't on a scholarship contract, but he's captaining that side. He's pretty handy, playing left back for them. So it's a good side, but it is also a young side that's being brought together all at once. So it's probably going to take them a little while to start turning that into results. That was frankly the same thing as happened to the Wellington Phoenix when they started. lost games, and it took them a few years to get more competitive. So they're on their way. They're doing all right.
Beauty. That is the niche cast for this week. Stay tuned. We got the bonus podcast for the Patreon whānau and anyone with a paid Substack subscription on Thursday. And we'll be busy typing away words about Aotearoa Sport newsletter on Thursday as well. Big up yourself. Love yourself. Kia kaha. Stay beautiful. Church.